Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Stitchka, and I teach second grade at Kinsey Elementary in Sioux Center, Iowa. In this presentation, I'd like to share with you all how learner profiles can help create an environment that promotes ownership, reflection, goals, and growth for deeper learning. This past school year, I implemented digital learner profiles that I created with my second graders, starting about halfway through the year, kind of a trial run. This year, with some adjustments, I'm planning on implementing these digital learner profiles with my new second graders. I'd like to share with you all my experience, the successes, the challenges, the connections, and the utility of incorporating tools like these with our students. As a way to quickly jot down questions, requests for clarification, or other feedback throughout the presentation, please feel free to join the Padlet using the link or URL on this slide. We will briefly discuss a few entries at the end of this presentation, and I'm excited to see the questions and feedback you provide on learner profiles. So, when I first began to explore the possibility of using learner profiles to try to engage my students, a few questions immediately came to mind for me. First, how can more ownership and motivation be built into the process of standards-based education? And how can I get students to invest themselves more in the work they are doing? Secondly, I wanted to explore how teachers could collaborate with students and parents to promote reflection, goal setting, and a growth mindset in both academic work and the important soft skills students need to be successful in school and in life. Lastly, with all the data that is available to us, how can we actually organize that data and look at student achievement and student needs in a logical, systematic, and understandable way that is not backbreaking for teachers that are already struggling to keep up with the changing landscape of education? So the concept of digital learner profiles, especially for younger students, is a fairly new strategy, I would say. So it was hard to specifically find studies and research that spoke to their efficacy or lack thereof. A useful approach for me was to consider some of the best practices identified by researcher John Hattie. And he's done meta-analysis work encompassing 25 years of research. He synthesized 1,850 meta-analysis studies of more than 108,000 individual studies, and that involved over 300 million students from around the world. While this research is not exhaustive, and it is certainly not without its own criticism and critiques, it provides a structure or lens through which to consider many of the practices that encapsulate the purpose and use of learner profiles. The practices listed on this slide are present in these learner profiles in various ways, and they have demonstrated high effect sizes in making deep learning visible. I do anticipate more tools and resources for learner profiles are going to continue to be used in elementary classrooms, and it will be interesting to see what that research shows us in the future as far as efficacy of this type of strategy. So I was intrigued to see the correlation and relationship between the traits and skills identified in, I'm sure we're all familiar with our Portrait of a Graduate initiative, and then kind of comparing that to other widely distributed 21st century skills standards. Much of the work done through these learner profiles meets the criteria for developing multiple skills, traits, and mindsets of both those 21st century skills as well as a Portrait of a Graduate. Students continually collaborate, create, persist, self-direct, and communicate to provide evidence of their learning and proficiency in multiple and meaningful ways. Having our own unique Portrait of a Graduate shows that we take these skills, habits, and traits, as well as the mindsets, seriously, and we are equally serious about applying them in our own unique, close-knit community context. I think that's something that we should be very proud of as a learning community. And we can quickly peruse both of these resources just to get a quick glimpse of this connection that I'm talking about. So looking here at 21st century skills, just a brief rundown of a definition of those skills like critical thinking, communication, creativity, perseverance, collaboration, information literacy, technology skills, literacy, self-direction, innovation skills. A lot of those skills that they're practicing and creating learning profiles, as you'll see when I demonstrate that for you, we find in 21st century skills. Now, similarly, it was really interesting to kind of take a peek again at our portrait of a graduate, and you can kind of see the similarities here. Being a skilled communicator, a productive collaborator, being a determined and empowered learner, creativity and innovation, community connections, cultural connections, and then health and wellness. So a lot of connections there between both 21st century skills and portrait of a graduate. Similarly, the Iowa Core Universal Constructs and the Habits of Mind shine through these learner profiles, demonstrating an acknowledgement of the importance we place on soft skills that we know will help our students be successful in and beyond school. And once again, a quick perusal of these resources show how related they are. These learner profiles also aided my students in practicing skills and dispositions found in the 21st century skills of the Iowa Core, including those things like employability skills and technology literacy. And I admit, while second grade may seem pretty early to be considering the importance of employability skills, I think we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the groundwork and foundational skills that are developed, I would say, yes, even among second graders. And so real quick here, just looking at the universal constructs of the habits of mind. We see critical thinking there. We see creativity, complex communication, collaboration, all skills that they're practicing in these learner profiles. When we look at our habits of mind, briefly, I'll pull that over. We see traits like creative, imagining and innovating, listening skills, questioning and posing problems, gathering data through our senses, persisting, thinking flexibly, metacognition, communicating, again, with clarity and precision, taking a risk, striving for accuracy, that connection with trying to demonstrate proficiency in standards and having a growth mindset is really leveraged in these learner profiles. And then last but not least, just a quick looking at what the Iowa Core actually has for specific 21st century skills. And we're going to see things, like I mentioned, we'll see those employability skills, technology literacy, and even if we just go to technology or employability skills and look at the third through fifth grade band, one of the first things we see right here, setting appropriate goals, identifying our strengths and weaknesses, being a team member, cooperating in a group setting, that collaboration component. So hopefully as I demonstrate, show you what these profiles look like, you're going to see how the tasks and dispositions really connect with what we're wanting kids to practice. So one more thing before diving into what our learner profiles look like and how they are built and managed, I think looking at them through the lens of the ISTE standards can be very valuable and worthwhile. So for those unfamiliar, what ISTE stands for is the International Society of Technology and Education. And the standards they provide for students, educators, and school leaders, I think, are so helpful and practical and illustrative of what high-quality learning looks like and sounds like in classrooms today and in the classrooms of the future. So real briefly, standards for students. Through these learner profiles, students demonstrate many of the traits of the ISTE standards for students, including being an empowered learner, a knowledge constructor, an innovative designer, a creative communicator, and a collaborator. More locally than globally, I would say, but still collaborating. I suggest visiting the ISTE website to see the specific skills associated with these standards. And just real briefly, I will just show you what that website looks like. It's really intuitive and navigable, easy to kind of explore. So here's the different standards for students, and then you can expand these to see kind of like the sub-standards. And just looking at like this one, for instance, man, these learner profiles really hit a lot of these substandards of what we think of an empowered learner to be in our classrooms today. So the ISTE standards, very valuable tool, I think. So there's also ISTE standards for educators. And educators collaborating with students on learner profiles demonstrate these various standards. And the nature of learner profiles and the associated learning processes afford so many opportunities to practice and develop these important skills and dispositions for educators, being a learner, a leader, a citizen, a collaborator, a designer, a facilitator, and an analyst. And once again, you can go to the ISTE website to explore those further. And then lastly, there are ISTE standards for educational leaders. Educational leaders would play a pivotal and instrumental role in providing the vision and leadership needed to create a culture that embraces strategies like learner profiles. Leaders need to provide visionary planning that empowers others to take risks, to explore their leadership potential in integrating technology into their classrooms in new and interesting ways, such as with these learner profiles. Okay, so almost ready to show you these profiles. Just a couple things about the benefits and the challenges of them from my experience. As I implemented and planned these learner profiles, I noticed a number of benefits. Some of them were anticipated, I would say. Others were unexpected. It was really exciting to see students more engaged with the content and standards we studied together. That excitement, which I think was really facilitated through setting goals and reflecting on their progress, finding opportunities for improvement. And then not only that, but then seeing the tangible results of that growth. That really helped to build ownership of their learning for many of my students. Parents definitely appreciated the instant and constant connection to their child's learning, and that made it very easy to check in and be more involved in general in the process. And the profiles are adaptive and responsive to work on any device, which is a nice feature. Many of the skills and traits required to be successful with learner profiles are, they're directly related to those skills that we just looked at, the Portrait of Graduate, Habits of Mind, and then 21st Century Iowa Core Skills. So, I guess while I did anticipate that there would be a connection there, I was really excited just to see how much crossover there was between those strategies and skills. So, I know there's probably a lot of questions about the challenges of doing something like this. And while I was excited for all of the success, there were obviously some considerable challenges associated with starting and managing these profiles. Though challenging, I do think the barriers can be overcome if we have the necessary vision, planning, structure, and support. So as with any initiative or strategy, I think time is a crucial component. I know as educators, we're already juggling so many priorities and responsibilities, both inside and outside of school for that matter. I'm a parent. I have small, young children, so I get it. And I think it would be unfair and unworkable to expect a majority of the work or training for something like this to occur outside of contract time. So I think necessary time and energy would need to be devoted to the process during contract hours and during professional development, since time is obviously a precious commodity. A second concern is the age and readiness of students to participate in learning profiles. So my experience shows that it's possible for second graders to excel using these learner profiles, but there are definitely many factors and variables that go into determining that, I think. Privacy is always relevant as far as student data is concerned. I will say that the Google ecosystem makes this manageable. I think even can be a strength of the profiles, but there's some skills and background knowledge involved. And I think tech departments and our tech leadership rightfully, they leave little air to chance when it comes to privacy. So that's something that would have to be kind of negotiated and troubleshooted and worked through. I would say perhaps the most challenging is just the general skill and proficiency needed with technology to kind of be efficient It's more than just being able to do it, but not having it be a complete kind of trap for your time. I think teachers are right to ask the question of, is this process worth the time and effort it's going to take to learn kind of a new, novel, and complex strategy like learner profiles? Some other feedback I've gotten from colleagues, brings up the concern of scalability and management of learner profiles beyond just a single classroom. I think that's a very valid point. I will say, I think as our data integration systems continue to evolve and improve, that we're going to have increasingly innovative and effective ways to kind of tackle that challenge that is not very time consuming for once the process is in place, and it's will be an easy ask of teachers. A lot of times they really won't even have to do anything. That information will just be readily available at their fingertips. Lastly, I would say a constant refrain, not unwarranted, from teachers is the increasing list of tasks, initiative, and priorities that we have being educators. Is this work worth the time and effort? And will it increase student achievement and lead to deeper learning? I think these are valid questions. My experience tells me yes, but that's just one instance or one anecdote. Okay, so now having thoroughly discussed that background, foundation, benefits, challenges, I'd really like to share with you now the process and product of these learner profiles. So there are 5 key components. First, the learner profile section would incorporate student self-reflection on strengths and challenges, and how students see themselves as learners. Ideally, this would include the results of a standardized learner assessment that will help students better understand their abilities and preferences as a learner, but that would be definitely grade and age appropriate for grade levels. The standard section is devoted to progress in each standard, and then there's spaces for artifacts, both digital and print, assessments, reassessments, and then reflection on those, which I think is a key component, that reflection component of this. The testing section provides an easy to understand visual format for students' progress in standardized testing in the grade level. And I really think the visual nature of that presentation of data, I've seen it be very powerful for my students when they can see charts and graphs, and they can engage with their progress and their data in a way that maybe makes a little more sense to them. The habits of mind section takes the habits a step further and encourages reflection and goal setting in those critical soft skills. And then the support section provides a space for noting accommodations, special services, progress monitoring data, a record of innovations, things like that. It is worth noting that our existing data structures, as they improve, there may be a possibility that a lot of this information can be linked just to a student dashboard, where it would really streamline the process and just make a lot of this just instantly accessible with no work from teachers at all. And so that's something that we'll kind of continue to explore as we improve those processes. So I'd just like to take a moment and kind of give you just a quick tour of sorts of a real learner profile from last year, as well as an updated template for this year. So I asked Anna from my class and her mom if she would be willing for me to share her learner profile with you, and she graciously said yes. Anna really enjoyed this process and really got engaged in it, became quite independent with it, honestly. And so this is the landing page. So these are Google Sites. So they're essentially a website that kids and teachers in collaboration can update. So the only data obviously I have is just for second grade here. And so when we go to second grade, we see those components that we talked about. Now there was a badge section, but that doesn't exist anymore. I kind of did away with that. So the learner profile section would look kind of like this. It would have a space for an about me section, a place for interests, who I am as a learner, strengths, challenges, and I would seek to tie this into some kind of a preference or an inventory that students do to learn about themselves. Um, Back to the landing page here. Here's all of Anna's standards. And let's just go to reading. And so here it shows how Anna progressed in her standards throughout the school year. She did a great job um, in all of our reading standards, made tons of growth. This is where she ended up at the end of the year. So kind of a progress bar so kids can see where they're at and where they ended up and how they have room for growth. Each standard was right here, and this is all pulled in from other data sources, so really no work for teachers. And we can see, so there's print assessments that were put in here, and we can kind of see how Anna did in different assessments. How did she do in describing story structure? Here's an example of a seesaw assessment that we can actually click through and see her work. We can even listen to her responses in here, kind of a neat feature. So both print and digital artifacts possible to do. So all the reading standards are here, math standards, all of those standards are here. In the updated version, I kind of have made it a little more intuitive and easier to manage. You can see here, though, that these print assessments, you can click through and see exactly how Anna answered. So there's reading, math, a space for all potential standards, even specials, if that was something that I wanted to try to do. Going back here to the testing section, a spot for reading and math tests. So here's Anna's reading scores throughout the year, MAPS reading, FAST, and STAR reading, so we can kind of see the growth that Anna made here. Very tangible, easy for kids to see where I started, where I ended the year. Love that. Kids really enjoyed that too. And going back to the Habits of Mind section, the Habits of Mind section has each of the habits. So the kids basically gave themselves a rating. So take the managing impulsivity habit. So Anna gave herself a rating. She thought she was a 2 this year. We do the same scale, 1, 2, and 3, as we do for our other rubrics. And I thought Anna was a 3. Why did I say that? Well, she did a great job of staying on task and managing impulsivity. Anna set a goal for herself. She did this with me, in collaboration with me. And so she set a goal for herself, and she worked on that, and I tried to help remind her of that goal. And then at the end of the year, she reflected on that goal, and she put her reflection in here. So there's an example of just really trying to build the reflection into this process. There's a spot for every habit of mind in here, and I made that a little more intuitive in the updated version. The support section, there's a spot for progress monitoring. And here is Anna's progress monitoring from the school year, her FAST progress monitoring. Taking a little bit to load there. There it goes. And so it kind of shows her growth and progress throughout the year. She was at 33 words a minute, benchmarked at the end of the year. Very proud of her work there. And then the other part of the supports section was just multi-tiered system of supports. So any interventions, any social, emotional, other documentation can be placed and even linked here so that we can have a record of all the supports that travel through with a kid. So that would be what it looked like this last year. Just briefly, the new and updated one. I won't spend a ton of time on this because it's fairly similar. This is my son Kyler. So a completed learner profile could maybe look something like this. And like I said, looking at maybe a kind of an inventory to do with kids for that. The standard section does look a little bit different. If we go to math here, there would be instead a place to put their artifact here, and then whether they're at a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, all that will be a very intuitive process for kids just to put those in, and kids will be guided in that process to learn how to build independence and do that. So then there's also a spot if they wanted to set a goal for themselves, they could type a goal of how they wanted to progress in those standards. So that's the standards section. Love to have your feedback on any of this. Um, the testing section, very similar, habits of mind, maybe looks a little bit different where now you can actually choose and click on a habit, and each habit has its own different page, so it's not one gigantic scrolling page, but something that maybe makes a little more sense. So easier for kids and parents, teachers to navigate. And then the support section, the badges will be gone. The support section would be similar in the progress monitoring and the various types of supports that are available. Remember, this is all private it's controlled how you share the settings so that it's only accessible to who you share it with. Okay, so that is a gist of what those profiles look like and what they kind of look like in action. So, so a little bit about how these profiles are managed. They're managed using Google Sites. It's a Google-based platform that integrates with other Google products. It's, like I said, it's highly privatizable. There's lots of layers of sharing and access of permissions that we can control. And then it's responsive on multiple devices. It provides instant and constant updates and connections for caregivers. And so getting into what structures I think are needed, I think these would be essential to help implement learner profiles on a broader scale. We would need realistic, manageable, and feasible connections and integration with the existing data. And I think we're starting to assemble those pieces. The technology infrastructure is there already for sure, as well as what is needed in technical support. What we would need, though, is additional professional development and a plan for an incremental implementation that makes sense for grade levels, readiness, and ability of all students. For instance, I think thinking about kindergarten, it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around that maybe a little bit, but I think just a structure that would just incorporate one standard from each content area, maybe one habit of mind, and that would be pretty much supported all by an educational technologist in a technology specials situation. So nothing really expected of too much of kindergarten teachers, but they could be brought into this process to kind of understand what we're trying to accomplish with this. And then, as you proceed or as you progress through grades, you would add more and build, but continue to build independence with a lot of scaffolding and support from a tech integrationist. And then, bringing teachers slowly into that process in a way that's not overwhelming. But I think the really important piece is just to build independence and get kids to manage and own this. And then teachers just support that in a very limited way and in collaboration with their students. And I think lastly, we need to continue to work on improving our standards and competency-based framework. Continue to develop our RTI and MTSS structures, and that's just going to help maximize the benefit of these learner profiles. Okay, I think getting close to the end here, what supports specifically are needed? I would say not just for learner profiles, but also just for more robust technology integration in general would be, I would really highly recommend that we explore, adding a full-time equivalent position for a tech integrationist. I just think that would be instrumental in meeting lots of different objectives, including the learner profiles and providing the support that teachers need, to kind of grow their skills and capacity to integrate technology. At this point, our lack of viable and discrete standards of technology in 21st century skills, I think, is problematic. So I think crafting reported standards that kind of comes from the Iowa Core and those ISTE standards that I shared is going to give some direction here. Once again, I don't think that is all in any way, shape, or form all on teachers to meet those standards, but a tech integrationist or a technologist could really help provide the specific leadership needed to help students meet those 21st century standards and help teachers develop capacity to kind of come along that process. And then lastly, building collective teacher efficacy around meaningful and effective tech integration. I just think it's such an important and worthy goal for us to strive towards. But that's going to take professional development efforts and support for that to happen. So, lastly, some time for some honest reflection. Do they work? Are they feasible? So, yes, I do believe in the power and promise of these learner profiles, but that's a big one. The supports and structures I laid out would most likely be a hinge point of whether or not this is feasible or even worthwhile. I don't see considerable improvement happening without more dedicated, specialized support in educational and especially that instructional technology component. I just think it's too much to ask of teachers without supporting them sufficiently and shaping a path for them to kind of build their skills and capacity in that area. Teachers already have so much on their plates. We have to ask the question, what priorities could shift, change, or even be eliminated, just so that teachers aren't overwhelmed, because this is an important one for teachers to develop the capacity to provide 21st century skills instruction. So I experience success at the classroom level with learner profiles, but that doesn't necessarily imply it's a good fit at scale. So I would recommend a conservative approach that takes the time needed and offers teachers a chance to take a risk if they choose to, collaborate with other teachers that are trying something like this out. And that is something that we can continue to build off of and improve the process over time. Ultimately, I do think that learner profiles are worth the effort. That this concept of having a profile and a portfolio that demonstrates competency of standards, I think it's such a powerful thing. I saw the positive effects for my students as they engage in the work. I'm really excited to see how this year goes, especially starting it at the beginning of the year and carrying it on throughout the year. So I would just say, please feel free to reach out if you'd like more information, ideas on how you can try this with your students and your families. I'm happy to help in any way I can. I would love to help. Here are the references that I kind of included in this presentation. I want to take a few minutes to maybe address any questions, clarifications, feedback you might have. So we can go to our Padlet here in just a moment and check that out. Thanks very much for your time and attention. While this is a relatively new concept, I think, I do think learner profiles hold a lot of promise in promoting deeper and more meaningful engagement in learning for our students that builds ownership, promotes reflection, and encourages goal setting and a growth mindset. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, concerns, or other feedback. Thank you so much for your time.